Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by reminding you of something simple yet profound. You are not a resource for others to exploit. You are not a ladder for someone to climb, nor a tool for someone's convenience. You are a human being with purpose, integrity, and worth. And yet, there will be those who grow angry with you, not because you've wronged them, but because you've finally chosen yourself. Their anger is not about you. It's about their inability to control you any longer. You see, people often build entire relationships on this silent expectation that you will always be there, bending, yielding, giving. And the moment you stand firm, when you stop answering every call, stop sacrificing your peace, stop being their savior, they feel betrayed. But hear me now. You owe no one your servitude. Their anger is not a reflection of your wrongdoing, but of their loss of access to the parts of you they took for granted. They're upset because they can't use you anymore. That's the truth no one wants to hear. Let this anger be your liberation, not your burden. It's proof that you've reclaimed your power. You've drawn a line and said, this far, no further. And yes, it will be lonely at times. The silence after a storm is always deafening, but within that silence lies the sound of freedom. Your freedom. Understand this. Growth is uncomfortable. It often means walking away from people who refuse to grow with you. It means letting go of the familiar weight of relationships that no longer serve your journey. And though some will call you selfish, know that self-preservation is not selfishness, it's survival. They will call you names, they will accuse you of change, and you know what? They're right. You have changed. You've evolved beyond the limits they placed on you. And that's not something to apologize for, it's something to celebrate. So when they grow angry, let them be. Do not engage. Do not defend. Let their anger wash over you like waves against a rock, because rocks don't answer to the sea. They stand firm. Your life is yours. Choose it. Your peace is sacred. Protect it. And your worth is immeasurable. Never again let anyone convince you otherwise. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But in practice, valuing your worth is one of the most challenging yet liberating acts you will ever undertake. This world is full of people who will attempt to define you based on what you can give them, how much you can do for them, and how easily you can bend to their will. It's a dangerous cycle, one where you begin to mistake their approval for your value. The truth is this: your worth has nothing to do with their opinions, needs, or expectations. It is inherent. It exists without condition, without negotiation, and without compromise. We are conditioned, almost from birth, to seek validation from the outside world. As children, we look to our parents, teachers, and peers for signs that we are doing well, that we are enough. This need for affirmation, though natural, can become a trap as we grow older. We begin to tie our sense of self-worth to external things. How much we can achieve, how well we can please, how useful we are to others. And in doing so, we lose sight of the unshakable truth: our value is not transactional. When you allow others to dictate your worth, you place your sense of self in their hands. You give them the power to decide how you should feel about yourself. And let me tell you, there will always be people who are all too willing to take that power. They'll weigh you down with expectations, guilt, and a never-ending list of demands. They'll make you feel as though your value depends on your ability to meet their needs, to make their lives easier, to fill the gaps in their worlds. But your worth is not a service. You are not here to be anyone's stepping stone, anyone's convenience, or anyone's solution. The moment you start valuing yourself, not for what you can give, but for who you are, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see the ways in which you've been undervaluing yourself all along. You realize how many times you've said yes when you wanted to say no, how many times you've stayed silent to avoid conflict, even when every fiber of your being screamed to speak up. How many times you've accepted less than you deserved, all because you didn't believe you were worth more. Valuing your worth means drawing boundaries. And let's not sugarcoat it. Boundaries are uncomfortable. They upset people who are used to having unlimited access to you. They challenge the status quo of relationships that thrive on imbalance. But those boundaries are necessary because they're the lines that protect your peace, your energy, and your sense of self. They're a declaration that you refuse to be defined by someone else's terms. Edna, it also means confronting your own doubts because, let's face it, sometimes the person who most undermines your worth is you. You tell yourself you're not good enough, not smart enough, not deserving enough. You carry the weight of past failures as though they define you, but they don't. Your worth is not determined by your mistakes, your insecurities, or the opinions of others. It is determined by the fact that you exist, that you are here, alive, and capable of growth. To truly value your worth, you must stop looking outward for confirmation. The world will never unanimously agree on your value, and it doesn't need to. What matters is that you believe in it, that you wake up each day knowing that you are enough, not because of what you can do for others, but because of who you are. When you finally embrace this truth, you will begin to see the world differently. You'll notice how many people have been benefiting from your undervaluation of yourself. You'll realize that some relationships were built not on mutual respect, but on how much you were willing to give without asking for anything in return. And while it may hurt to confront these truths, it is also empowering, because once you see your worth, you can no longer pretend not to. Valuing your worth is not selfish, it's essential. It's a reclamation of power that was never meant to be given away. And as you step into this understanding, you will find a new strength, a new peace, and a new freedom that comes from within. Growth is a natural and inevitable part of life, yet it often comes with resistance, not just from within yourself, but from those around you. The truth is, when you outgrow a situation, it disrupts the balance others have grown comfortable with. For some, your growth is a mirror reflecting their stagnation. For others, it is a loss of the version of you they were accustomed to, the version they found convenient or easy to manage. And when that happens, resentment can arise. It's important to understand that this resentment is rarely about you. It's about change. And change makes people uncomfortable. When you outgrow a situation, whether it's a friendship, a relationship, a job, or even a mindset, it challenges the status quo. People who were comfortable with the old version of you may struggle to accept the new one, not because it's worse, but because it's unfamiliar, and for some, unfamiliarity feels like a threat. You may find yourself being accused of things that are untrue. People might call you distant or selfish. They might question your motives, wondering why you've changed or why you've left them behind. But what they often fail to see is that growth is not abandonment. It's evolution. It's the natural progression of someone who refuses to stay confined by the limitations of their past. Resentment can also arise because your growth highlights choices they haven't made for themselves. When you strive for more understanding, more fulfillment, more peace, it can shine a light on their decision to remain the same. This isn't your fault, nor is it your responsibility to fix. Your growth isn't a judgment on their lives, but it may feel that way to them. And so, instead of applauding your progress, they might pull away, criticize, or try to hold you back. It's tempting in these moments to shrink yourself to fit back into the spaces you've outgrown. You might feel guilt for moving forward while others remain where they are. But growth requires courage, and part of that courage is understanding that you can't carry everyone with you. Some people are only meant to be part of your journey for a season. That doesn't diminish the value they've brought to your life, but it also doesn't mean you owe them the sacrifice of your potential. There will also be times when resentment comes not from others but from yourself. Growth demands discomfort, and leaving behind the familiar can feel like a loss, even when it's necessary. You might mourn the version of yourself that once fits so easily into certain spaces, the relationships that once felt effortless, or the comfort of routines that no longer serve you. But mourning isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of transformation. It's the process of letting go so you can make room for what's next. As you outgrow situations, you'll begin to notice patterns. The people who resent your growth are often the ones who benefited most from your stagnation. They may have enjoyed the predictability of the old you, the one who didn't challenge their behavior or disrupt the dynamic. But your growth isn't about pleasing them. It's about becoming the person you're meant to. And those who truly care for you, who genuinely want the best for you, will celebrate your evolution, even if it means adjusting to a new dynamic. It's also worth noting that growth doesn't always mean cutting ties or leaving situations entirely. Sometimes it means redefining them. It means setting new boundaries, having difficult conversations, or choosing to engage differently. And while this can still provoke resentment, it's a necessary part of creating a life that aligns with who you are becoming. When you outgrow a situation, it's a sign that you're moving closer to your truth. Resentment, whether from others or within yourself, is simply a byproduct of change. It's not an indication that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something right. And while it's never easy to face, it's always worth it, because growth, no matter how uncomfortable, is the path to becoming the fullest, truest version of yourself. As we journey through life, we encounter countless people who leave impressions on us, shaping who we are in big and small ways. Some relationships come into our lives like blessings, others like lessons. But not everyone we meet is meant to stay. It's a hard truth, one we often resist, because as humans we crave connection. We hold onto the familiar, believing that longevity is the measure of a relationship's worth. But the reality is that time isn't the only indicator of value. Some people are only meant to walk with us for a season, and there's nothing wrong with that. There will be those who fit perfectly into one chapter of your life but not the next. At first, this can feel confusing, even painful. You might wonder why someone who once felt so vital, so central to your story, now feels distant. But that's the nature of growth. As you evolve, your needs, priorities, and perspectives change. Sometimes these changes align with the people around you, and sometimes they don't. That doesn't mean there's animosity or failure, it just means you're moving in different directions. It's tempting to hold on, to try to force relationships to stay the same, even when it's clear they've run their course. We cling to the memories, the shared history, the idea of what the relationship used to be. But holding on too tightly can stifle both you and the other person. Growth requires space, and sometimes that space comes in the form of letting go. When you accept that not everyone is meant to stay, you free yourself from the weight of trying to make every relationship last forever. You realize that some connections are meant to teach you something specific, to help you navigate a particular season of life. Once that purpose is fulfilled, it's okay to release them with gratitude, knowing they serve their role. This doesn't diminish their importance. It honors it. But letting go isn't always easy. It can feel like a loss, even when it's the right thing to do. You may question yourself, wondering if you've made a mistake or if you could have done more to preserve the relationship. This self-doubt is natural, but it's important to remember that not every goodbye is a failure. Sometimes it's an act of love, for yourself and for the other person. Holding on to a relationship that no longer serves either of you only breeds resentment and stagnation. Letting go, on the other hand, allows both of you to grow in your own ways. There will also be people who choose to leave your life, and this can be even harder to accept. When someone decides they no longer want to be part of your journey, it can feel like rejection, as though you weren't enough. But their decision isn't always about you. People leave for their own reasons rooted in their own needs, struggles, and growth. Their departure doesn't mean you lacked value in their life. It simply means your paths are no longer aligned. The beauty in accepting that not everyone is meant to stay is that it makes space for the people who are. When you release relationships that no longer serve you, you open the door for connections that are more aligned with who you are now. You allow yourself to attract people who truly see you, support you, and grow with you. These are the relationships that sustain you, that add depth and meaning to your life. It's also worth acknowledging that some relationships will ebb and flow. People may leave and then return later when the timing is right. Others may transform into something different, yet equally meaningful. A friendship might shift into a casual acquaintance, or a deep connection might evolve into mutual respect from a distance. These changes don't erase the value of what once was. They simply reflect the natural rhythms of life. They simply reflect the natural rhythms of life. Ultimately, accepting that not everyone is meant to stay is an act of self-compassion. It's a recognition that your journey is unique and not everyone is equipped to walk every step of it with you. It's an acknowledgement that relationships, like seasons, have their own cycles of beginnings and endings. And while endings can be bittersweet, they are also opportunities for growth, for new beginnings, and for discovering the relationships that are truly meant to last. Freedom is one of the most profound and cherished states of existence, but is also one of the hardest to achieve. True freedom isn't about where you live, what you own, or even what you're allowed to do. True freedom is an internal state, one that comes when you reclaim your mind, your emotions, and your decisions from the grip of manipulation. The moment you stop allowing others to control you with guilt, fear, or obligation, you begin to taste what freedom truly feels like. Manipulation can be subtle. It doesn't always arrive in obvious forms. It often comes wrapped in concern, disguised as love, or veiled in the language of duty. A friend might guilt you into doing something you don't want to do by saying, "I thought you cared about me." A family member might try to sway your choices by reminding you of all the sacrifices they've made. A colleague might take advantage of your kindness by making you feel selfish for setting boundaries. Or these are small but significant ways people attempt to manipulate you, not always maliciously, but in ways that benefit them more than they benefit you. When you allow manipulation to dictate your choices, you lose a piece of yourself. You become a puppet on someone else's stage, your strings pulled to serve their needs, not your own. It's easy to fall into this trap, especially if you're someone who values harmony, avoids conflict, or takes pride in being dependable. You might tell yourself it's just easier to go along with what they want, that saying no will only make things worse. But every time you give in, you reinforce the cycle. You teach others that your boundaries are negotiable, that your needs are secondary, and that your voice can be silenced. Freedom begins the moment you recognize manipulation for what it is. It's not love, it's not care, it's not responsibility. Manipulation is control, plain and simple. It's an attempt to bend your will to serve someone else's agenda. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The next step is learning to resist it. And this is where many people struggle, because resisting manipulation often feels like a betrayal of others, of expectations, even of yourself. But resistance is not betrayal, it is liberation. It is the act of reclaiming your autonomy, of standing up and saying, "I am not here to live your version of my life." This doesn't mean you stop caring about others or fulfilling your responsibilities. It means you approach relationships with clarity, honesty, and mutual respect. It means you refuse to let guilt or fear dictate your decisions. Learning to resist manipulation requires self-awareness. You have to understand your triggers, what makes you vulnerable to being controlled. For some, it's a fear of conflict. For others, it's a deep-seated need for approval. Whatever it is, once you identify it, you can begin to build defenses. These defenses aren't about shutting people out, they're about setting boundaries that protect your sense of self. One of the most powerful tools against manipulation is the ability to say no without apology. A simple no is one of the most liberating words in any language, yet it's one of the hardest to say. We often feel the need to explain, justify, or soften our refusals. But every time you apologize for your boundaries, you diminish them. Saying no is not cruel. It's not selfish. It's honest. And honesty is the foundation of true freedom. Manipulators rely on your fear of discomfort. They count on you avoiding awkward conversations, on you giving in to maintain peace. But here's the truth. Peace that comes at the cost of your freedom is not peace at all. It's suppression. True peace is being able to live authentically without the constant pressure to conform to someone else's expectations. When you stop being available to manipulation, you notice a shift not just in yourself, but in the people around you. Some will resist your change. They'll push harder, try new tactics, or accuse you of being selfish. But their reactions are not your responsibility. Their inability to manipulate you anymore is their loss, not yours. Others, however, will respect you more for standing your ground. They may even start to approach you differently, recognizing that you're no longer someone who can be easily swayed. True freedom isn't just about resisting manipulation from others, it's also about releasing the ways you manipulate yourself. Bells can be turned inward, bottoms and bows, or the shelf crafts, stupid. His friend Bruss's Kia. Free yourself from the inner dialogue that tells you you're not enough, that you have to prove your worth, that you owe the world something you don't. Freedom doesn't come from changing the people around you. It comes from changing the way you engage with them. It's about taking responsibility for your choices and refusing to hand that power to anyone else. It's about choosing yourself every single day, unapologetically and without hesitation. And in that choice, you will find the truest form of freedom, the kind that no one can ever take away from you. There is an undeniable power in silence, a strength that is often underestimated in a world that values constant noise and immediate reactions. Silence, when used intentionally, can say more than words ever could. When faced with disrespect, silence becomes an act of defiance, a refusal to engage with behavior that diminishes your worth. It is not weakness, it is restraint. It is not surrender, it is self-respect. Disrespect often comes in the form of provocation, words or actions designed to elicit a reaction. The person being disrespectful seeks to pull you into their chaos, to make you respond in a way that validates their behavior or gives them power over your emotions. They want to see you lose your composure, to bring you down to their level. But when you meet disrespect with silence, you deny them what they seek. You take control of the narrative, showing that their words or actions do not define you and that your dignity is not up for negotiation. Silence creates space, and in that space the truth becomes evident. It forces the disrespectful person to confront the weight of their own actions without the distraction of your reaction. Without the fuel of your words or energy, their disrespect hangs in the air, unchallenged but exposed. This can be unsettling for them because silence holds a mirror to their behavior, reflecting back their insecurities, their flaws, and their intentions. But silence is not about ignoring or suppressing your feelings. It is about channeling your energy into something more constructive than an argument. Responding to disrespect with silence doesn't mean you don't feel hurt or angry. It means you value your peace more than the temporary satisfaction of a rebuttal. It means you understand that not every battle is worth fighting and that your self-worth isn't up for debate. In it, silence is also a way of protecting yourself. Engaging with disrespect often leads to a cycle of negativity, where words escalate and the situation spirals into something far more damaging than it needs to be. By choosing silence, you set a boundary. You say, without words, this is not worth my time, my energy, or my attention. And in doing so, you reclaim your power. There will be those who interpret your silence as submission, as though your lack of response means you've accepted or condoned their behavior. But true silence is never passive. It is active and intentional, a deliberate choice to rise above. It takes strength to remain silent in the face of provocation, to resist the urge to defend yourself or retaliate. That strength speaks volumes, far more than any argument ever could. In some cases, silence can even inspire change. When someone is met with silence instead of the reaction they were expecting, it can force them to reflect. They may begin to question their behavior, wondering why it didn't provoke you or why it felt hollow in the absence of your response. Silence can be a teacher, showing others that their actions have consequences, not in the form of retaliation, but in the form of lost respect, lost connection, and lost access to your energy. However, the power of silence lies not just in how it affects others, but in how it affects you. Silence gives you the opportunity to process, to reflect, and to decide how you want to move forward. It allows you to respond from a place of clarity rather than emotion, ensuring that whatever action you take next aligns with your values and self-respect. There is a misconception that silence is passive or weak, that is the choice of someone who doesn't know what to say or doesn't have the courage to speak up. But silence, when used with intention, is one of the most powerful tools at your disposal. It requires discipline to hold your tongue, to resist the urge to engage, and to trust that your silence carries its own message. In a world where everyone is eager to speak, to defend, to retaliate, silence is a rare and profound act. It sets you apart, showing that you do not need to shout to be heard, that your value isn't determined by your ability to win an argument, and that your peace cannot be shaken by someone else's disrespect. Silence is your shield, your statement, and your power, all wrapped into one. It demands respect not through force but through presence, proving that sometimes the loudest thing you can do is simply say nothing at all. Self-respect is one of the most critical foundations of a fulfilling life, yet it is often one of the hardest qualities to practice consistently. It requires not just knowing your worth, but acting in alignment with it, even when those actions are uncomfortable, unpopular, or challenging. Self-respect is not about arrogance or selfishness. It is about recognizing that your value does not depend on the approval or validation of others. With us, it's the quiet, unshakable confidence that you are enough, no matter the circumstances, and that you owe it to yourself to make choices that honor who you are and who you're striving to become. Choosing yourself is not always easy. There will be moments when it feels simpler to compromise your boundaries for the sake of keeping the peace. You may be tempted to say yes when you mean no, to tolerate mistreatment just to avoid good conflict, or to prioritize the happiness of others over your own well-being. But at every time you abandon yourself to accommodate others, you chip away at your self-respect. You send yourself a message that your needs, feelings, and boundaries don't matter as much as someone else's. And that is a dangerous message to internalize. True self-respect is choosing yourself, especially when it's hard. It's the decision to walk away from a toxic relationship, even though it might leave you feeling lonely for a while. It's the courage to say no to opportunities that don't align with your values, even if it means taking a harder path. It's standing firm in your boundaries, even when others push against them or try to make you feel guilty. These choices are never easy, but they are necessary, because each time you choose yourself, you strengthen the foundation of your self-worth. Choosing yourself often means disappointing people, and that can be one of the most challenging parts of practicing self-respect. People may not understand your decisions. They may label you as selfish, ungrateful, or even cruel, but their reactions are not a reflection of your character. They are a reflection of their expectations. When you choose yourself, you are not saying that others don't matter. They are reasons to enjoy life safely, enjoying it. You are simply saying that you matter too. And sometimes, in order to honor yourself, you have to let go of the need to be liked or understood by everyone. There's a deep fear that comes with choosing yourself, a fear of being judged, rejected, or abandoned. But the alternative, living a life where you constantly sacrifice your needs and values for the sake of others, is far more damaging. Self-respect is about trusting that you can handle the consequences of putting yourself first, even when it feels uncomfortable or uncertain. It's about believing that your worth is not up for debate, and that anyone who truly cares for you will respect your choices even if they don't fully understand them. It's important to remember that choosing yourself doesn't mean you stop caring for others. In fact, self-respect allows you to show up for others in a more authentic and meaningful way. When you respect yourself, you set the standard for how others should treat you, and you inspire them to do the same for themselves. You teach people through your actions that love, respect, and care must first come from within. Self-respect is also about owning your mistakes and imperfections. It's not about pretending to be perfect or avoiding accountability. In fact, choosing yourself often involves acknowledging where you've gone wrong, learning from your experiences, and committing to doing better. It's the ability to look at yourself with honesty and compassion, to forgive yourself for your past missteps, and to move forward with intent. Perhaps the hardest part of self-respect is choosing yourself in moments of doubt. When you feel unworthy, unlovable, or incapable, it's easy to fall into the trap of seeking validation from others. But self-respect means choosing to believe in yourself even when the world feels uncertain. It's about standing firm in your identity and refusing to let external circumstances dictate your sense of worth. Amen. Self-respect is not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It's about the small, consistent choices you make every day to honor yourself. It's saying no when you need to, taking care of your mental and physical health, and surrounding yourself with people who uplift and inspire you. It's about living a life that feels true to who you are, even when it's difficult, and trusting that the rewards of self-respect far outweigh the temporary discomfort of choosing yourself. Walking away is one of the hardest choices a person can make, yet it is often the most necessary act of strength and self-preservation. Society sometimes paints walking away as an act of surrender, a sign of weakness or failure, but in reality, choosing to walk away is one of the most powerful demonstrations of self-respect and inner strength. It's an act that says, I refuse to stay in a place, relationship, or situation that costs me my peace of mind. There is a quiet bravery in knowing when to leave. Staying can sometimes feel easier, it's familiar, even if it's harmful. Walking away, on the other hand, requires confronting the unknown, facing uncertainty, and risking judgment or misunderstanding. It means being willing to let go of comfort and familiarity in order to protect your mental and emotional well-being. That's not weakness, it's courage in its purest form. Valuing your peace doesn't mean avoiding challenges or running from difficulties. Life will always bring struggles and conflicts, and there is value in working through them when they align with your growth and principles. But there's a difference between constructive challenges that help you grow and toxic environments that drain your spirit. Walking away is not about avoiding problems, it's about recognizing when a situation no longer serves your well-being, when staying is doing more harm than good. Peace is one of the most precious things you can have. It's not something you can buy or borrow, it's something you cultivate within yourself. But peace requires protection. It's fragile in the presence of chaos, manipulation, and disrespect. When you remain in a situation that disrupts your peace, whether it's a toxic relationship, a draining job, or a friendship that's no longer reciprocal, you send a message to yourself that your well-being is secondary to your fear of change or judgment. But being able to stay with something that has been really challenging or that matters a lot, walking away reverses that message. It's a declaration that your inner peace matters more than the opinions of others or the comfort of the familiar. Many people fear walking away because they worry about what others will think. They fear being labeled a quitter or being judged for not sticking it out. But here's the truth. No one else is living your life. No one else feels the weight of your struggles, your frustrations, or your unhappiness. Only you can decide what is best for you, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to prioritize your well-being over other people's expectations or judgments. Walking away is not a sign that you don't care. In fact, it often comes from caring too much. For others, for the situation, or even for the version of yourself that once believed things could be different. But caring doesn't mean staying at the expense of your peace. It's possible to care deeply and still recognize when it's time to let go. Walking away doesn't erase the love, effort, or time you've invested. It simply acknowledges that continuing to stay would cost you more than you're willing to give. Sometimes walking away means grieving what could have been. It means accepting that not every situation will work out the way you hoped, and not every person will meet you where you are. This grief can feel overwhelming, but it's also a form of healing. It allows you to close one chapter so you can move forward and create space for something better. It's important to remember that walking away is not always permanent. There are situations where distance creates clarity, where stepping away allows both parties to grow, reflect, and possibly reconnect later on healthier terms. But even if that reconnection never happens, walking away is still a victory. It's a choice to prioritize your mental and emotional health, to give yourself the chance to rebuild, recover, and rediscover your peace. Andy Piper, sir, walking away doesn't just benefit you, it also sets an example for others. It shows that self-respect is non-negotiable and that peace is worth protecting at all costs. It demonstrates that strength isn't about enduring endless discomfort or mistreatment, it's about knowing when to let go. This act of choosing yourself can inspire those around you to do the same, to realize that they, too, deserve a life filled with peace and respect. In walking away, you reclaim your power. You remind yourself that you are in control of your life and that you have the right to choose what stays and what goes. It's a deeply liberating feeling, one that comes with its own set of challenges, but ultimately leads to a life that feels more aligned with who you are and what you truly deserve. Walking away isn't about giving up, it's about standing up for your peace, your happiness, and your worth. In the end, life is too short to let others dictate your peace, your worth, or your path. People may be angry when they can no longer use you, when you reclaim your power, or when you choose yourself unapologetically. But their anger is not your burden to carry. It is merely a reflection of their inability to control you anymore. True strength lies in knowing when to let go, when to say no, and when to walk away from what no longer serves you. You are not obligated to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's expectations or to sacrifice your peace for the sake of maintaining appearances. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It is a profound act of self-respect. Silence in the face of disrespect, boundaries in the face of manipulation, and the courage to prioritize your well-being are the hallmarks of someone who values their life and their peace. So take a stand for yourself, even when it's hard. Let your silence, your boundaries, and your decisions speak louder than words. In doing so, you'll discover the freedom and inner peace that come from living a life authentically rooted in self-respect. Remember, your peace is priceless. Protect it fiercely.